So I am so excited tonight. Keith has another stellar lineup for our Wisdom Wednesday. And you are going to hear Roy just as I am. I've never met Roy. So Roy has done self-publishing, and Gayl Murphy's here. And both of them are going to talk about the advantages and disadvantages of self-publishing. And we have, again, our around the globe. Keith is in Australia. Roy, did I hear him say correctly you're in Hawaii?
Yes, that's right.
Awesome. So what time is it there now?
It's 2:08 p.m.
So you're still in the afternoon. It's 7 here. So. And Gayl, you're out in Los Angeles, is that correct?
Yes, and it's 8:08. I'm sorry, it's 4:08.
4:08. I was like, you're not an hour ahead of us. That's good. Well, I'm so glad to have you here, and we're going to be talking about the self-publishing. So, Keith, take it away.
Well, look, I just love what we're doing here. Every time we do a show, it's slightly different. So Roy is talking about his 5 fiction books, his 5 fiction books, his non-fiction book, his audio books, how he's using Amazon, and why self-publishing is the gun, because he's in complete control of his writing destiny. But, of course, he has to do the work. So he's going to talk about both sides, the advantages and the disadvantages. Gayl has written a book. She's self-published that. We're going to talk about that. This show is all about how to market yourself as a writer. The group is all about that. So, Roy, I want to start with you, and I want to talk firstly about the list of things you've done. But you've done both fiction and non-fiction, and you've self-published. I really want to hear from you. What are the advantages of self-publishing, and why did you choose that? I just want to work you through some of what Roy's been doing. First of all, he has a series of science fiction inspired fiction books, which have come out, of course, as traditional books, but they've also been narrated as audio books, which is another really great idea for the world of writing. He's got a non-fiction book, which he also has had narrated. And he has been using Medium, which is a blogging platform, which he has had great success with. And if we can get his sound to work, we'll get him back. So while Roy is finding out what's happening with his audio, let's talk about Gayl's brand new gig in Redondo Beach, California. Can you tell me about what's going on here tomorrow?
Well, this is the source of this is the Greater Los Angeles Writers Society. So they produce a real thorough variety of different conferences with great frequency, which is great. And I've been speaking at their conferences for years. I'm speaking at their conferences for years because I teach CEOs and showbiz pros and authors and experts and entrepreneurs basically how to tell it to sell it. Who you are, what you're selling, why do I need it, where can I get it? And it's about engagement. It's about getting people to know you. It's like, we live in a world right now armed with a couple of smartphones and some social media accounts. We're broadcasting bigger and badder than ABC News and BBC. And seriously, what is it that you want people to know about you? That you just ate a donut? So we need to step up. Because
you've come on the show a few times to talk about this, Gayl. I really want to pick up on this. You've just said there, you've got the world listening. Do you want to tell them you're eating a donut? You've got the chance to really tell your story. Mm-hmm. So why not play that game? How do we do it? Why is that so important now?
Well, because the thing is, people don't buy from you. If they don't know you, they don't buy. Even if they know you, people buy the experience of you. They buy your story. They buy your journey is really what they do. So be generous and forthcoming with your journey and what it was like. It's, you know, let's get real, people. What was it really like? It wasn't like you just walked into town and they gave you a contract. We want to know how you had to work in a shoe store, and 6 months ago you were saying, do you want fries with that? That's what we want. I remember when I interviewed The Rock, and it was sometime in the middle of the interview, because I always like to dive deep. And it's like, okay, so give me an example of what you were doing 6 years ago. And he started to cry because he was homeless. He was living in a friend's garage, and he hadn't had all the success, but he, soldiered on. And he knew that, success would come. That endeared me to him.
Yeah.
I emotionally bought into him. I felt what he was feeling. You can't buy that. You can't fake it. You can't generate it. And you can't press a button. All you can do is be in your truth. And that's the world we live in right now, is our truth. Because people don't buy from you. What they do is they emotionally invest in you. They buy your story.
Yeah,
because
they buy your story. They buy your story, don't they?
That's what they do. That's what they do. So if you don't want to get clobbered by the media, you really just want to put it out there. Now, that doesn't mean that you actually go out there and just blah, 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 blah. I mean, there's a lot to do. The media is sound bites, it's talking points, it's snippets, it's knowing how to present yourself.
Do you want to pick up on this, Joyce? I think we've got Roy back here with us. I'm going to come back to Roy, but do you want to pick up on this, Joyce? And we've had Gayl on the show a few times, but it's always very fascinating to hear these real stories about how writers can get themselves out there.
Yeah, it is, and I love what you said about The Rock, because it gives us hope for those that are still back in the trenches. That, if he can go from there to where he's at now, which is amazing. It's hard to imagine him in a place where he's living out of somebody's garage. It's hard to imagine somebody with that talent was ever in that position. And, it's the same thing with writers. If you are honest about your story, people want to hear your story. And you may think, well, my story's boring. But to other people, it's probably not, because they want to know, what did you have to do to get where you were going? I mean, mine is nothing grand, but I worked as an office manager for a ophthalmologist while I was writing my first book, and he knew, and that was the nice thing. He knew I had goals and plans to write and eventually leave, and that was, not all businesses and companies are as welcoming to that idea. Some of them don't want you doing other things like that. But if you, a lot of people, you still have to work when you're writing. Roy, did you work when you were, I'm assuming you write full time now, or are you still working, or how did it work for you?
For me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I do have a day job. I'm a teacher. I teach chemistry and biology.
Oh, wow.
I've worked as a research scientist. I started writing when I was working on my 4th and 5th degree, and it kind of turned into writing. It was unintentional. So I never had the intent to write as a career. But I just decided that it was something that I wanted to do and wanted to continue to do and to improve. And so I think it's possible that I could stop working if I really wanted to. I think I'm at the point now where I have enough multiple streams of income. I might have to downsize a little bit if I wanted to do that, but I right now I'm not planning on it. I mean, I love teaching, and part of the reason that I teach is the same reason that I write. But I think everybody can do both, and they have to do both at some point. But I think you just have to have the courage to keep going, and that's the main thing.
Right.
Yeah. Well, can I pick up on that? I want to pick up on the idea that you're working a day job which you love, and you're writing which you love. and that you could possibly, with multiple streams of income, and this is what I really want to pick up on. Let me pick up on this idea. We have two graphics here from two variations of your time travel series, but you actually have 5 fiction books, which you've then turned into audiobooks, and you've got a non-fiction book, which you turned into an audiobook. Can you explain that process and how the multiple streams of income mean that if you wanted to, with a little bit of downsizing, you could possibly make a reasonable living from your writing? How did you do it? Because like The Rock, you started somewhere and you've got to a point. Can you tell that story?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, it's Lao Tzu that says the journey of a thousand miles begins with one step, right? I mean, that's what you have to do. You just have to put one foot in front of the other, and you have an idea of a destination where you want to go, and you just keep going. And with writing, you've mentioned that there's multiple pieces that you have to put together, and so that's what you do. You start with the first piece, which is writing the book. And actually, for me, I kind of like skipped a little bit. I started writing the book, and I had about 30 pages, and because this was an accident, I had kind of had it in the back of my mind. Okay, I'm going to write this, and over the course of 2 years, I had written about 30 pages, and it was like maybe November of 2012. I read this book, How I Sold Like 6 Million Copies on Amazon by John Locke. And then I was going the traditional route. I was planning on getting an agent and then doing the whole thing. And then I read the book, and I just I can do this. I know I can do this. I had no doubt in my mind that I could do it. And so that day, I set up a Goodreads account, a Twitter account. I set up my own website, and I hired Damonza to do the cover art for the book that I hadn't written. And so I basically, put myself out there and said, I'm going to have this book, in 30 days. And
you had the trust, didn't you? Had the trust that it was going to get done. You did the artwork ahead of time, knowing full well that it was going to get done. And you told the universe effectively, this is where I'm going. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, you can tell yourself you're going to do something, and then you just procrastinate. So by putting myself out there was a way to hold myself accountable. And I think we need accountability, and that's one way to do it, is to tell people that you're going to do it. And so you have that accountability, and so it forces you to write. Now, I'm not necessarily telling you to go and do that, but for me, I knew that I could get it done. And you have to kind of know yourself and know what you're capable of and what you can do. So you have to do it on your own terms. But you can take that accountability down a notch, and you can customize it to whatever way you want to. But that's when I decided to look at the marketing, and so I kind of just jumped in. I jumped in and started looking at all of the different aspects of the marketing that I was going to need to do, and so just one piece at a time. That's what I did, and I was really active on Goodreads initially. I did a lot of free promotions and all that kind of stuff. I had the newsletter set up, and I mean, I did everything. And then I had the book published. I think it was early February of 2013. And then I said, okay, I'm going to do a series, and I'm going to do another one. And so that's what I did. And I came out pretty quick with the second one. So the first and the second one, I had a pretty short turnaround. And it took me a while to get the third one out, maybe another year or so. But that's what you have to do. You have to write, and then you have to iterate. And that's the key thing. Some people don't iterate.
Have you always been this deliberate in your life?
Yes.
Can you pick up on that, Gayl? You did a somewhat similar thing. How did you do it?
How do I do it? Well, I've come to peace with my my drawbacks. I've been in a situation where I don't even want to talk about it because I know I'm never going to do it. So I try to be honest with myself, but a lot of it has to do with what I feel inside of it. Sometimes I can just see it as clear as a bell, and there's no way I need to even confer with another person about it. It's just, it's already real for me. And so I get that. I wasn't thinking about writing a book, but a friend of mine who was not a friend of mine, I didn't know him then, he came to my seminar in Orange County, and we talked in the parking lot for some time afterwards, and he said, "You're going to write a book." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, that's never going to happen, like ever." And a year later, I had a book, and he helped me with it. He helped me put it together. He helped me with just absolutely everything I could possibly want.
And did you self-publish it, or did you find a publisher?
I self-published it.
Okay. And so do you see that as a major advantage in that context, or would you have preferred to have published it professionally, sensibly, but in the traditional way?
Well, you know what? Because I work in the entertainment industry, there's so many rules. And when it comes to so many rules, it's so, you know what? I didn't want to play in their sandbox. I just didn't.
Okay.
They didn't know me. And you know, when I left ABC and I went to work for BBC, I think we've talked about this. I didn't want to stay with ABC because the person that I was going to be working under had never done my job.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to work for anybody who had never done my job because they would never know how good I was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They would never be able to see me.
Well, let's pick up on that, Gayl. You've said
less travel. Yes.
Let's pick up on that. You said a very key point, and I want to pick up on Roy's journey here because he's done it so well as well. You said you don't want to play in their sandbox. The thing that I see with self-publishing, in the same way that music has a very similar vibe, is that if you can take charge of your marketing, if you can take charge of your destiny, you can do with that book what you want. You can turn it into an audio book. You can sell it at the back of the room if you're doing speaking gigs. You can do a world tour and sell it in the library of every town in the US. You can do whatever you want because it's your book and you're in charge. So that's the advantage. The disadvantage is that you've got to do it. And so I want to throw to Roy because he's done it.
That's the good news and the bad news.
The good news and the bad news. So, Roy, can you tell me a little bit about how you've done it from the major advantages point of view? Let's play with the advantages. What are the advantages of self-publishing, and how did you do it?
Well, I think the biggest advantage is flexibility, and especially with time. So, like you're on your own time scale. And for me, that's usually, I want to move the time scale up, because if you have a traditional book deal, I mean, you're talking usually a year and a half, maybe 2 years before, when you start to when you actually get the book out there, and sometimes longer, and then sometimes, you'll get your publisher and then they'll just say, we decided to go in a different direction, and so, depending on what your contract is, you may not have something to be able to put out there. So I think working on your own time, whether you want to push it up or push it back, that's definitely huge. Yeah, that's probably the biggest, I would say, biggest advantage. And you can pivot if you want to. I mean, you could at any point you can say, all right, I'm going to change. I'm going to do this and do that for whatever reason, and that allows you to work with the marketplace, to work with whatever's happening.
Yeah. You can be more agile, can't you? You can be more agile with the marketplace.
Absolutely. It's like a small business versus a huge corporation,
Right.
I mean, those small businesses, they can be lethal. I mean, they don't necessarily have that big punch, but, they can maneuver really quickly. And you can do the same thing. If you see that something's happening, I mean, just look what happened with coronavirus. You can say, all right, I'm going to get 3 books out there in the next 3 months, and I'm going to do this and that, and I'm going to, tweak the genre and do whatever you can. And, a big, publishing house is not going to have that same flexibility.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you want to pick up on this, Joyce? I want to honor the fact that Joey is in the call and she's got a couple of questions about the disadvantages of self-publishing. I've got those questions in mind. I'll come to that when we get to the disadvantage section. But do you want to pick up on what Roy said there, Joyce, and how there really is this agility when you do self-publishing? What's your thoughts on that?
There is, and I wanted to say, Roy, I can relate about getting your book out there. I had my first book, I had a business coach practically dare me to like, hey, just get it done, because I had fiddled around with it for 3 years, or 3.5, and she's like, I was about 3 weeks in. It was a devotional, and I was about 3 weeks in, and she's like, just start sending it to your email list, and you'll get some feedback. Well, that just made me panic inside, thinking, what? Send it to them now? It's not pretty. It's not done. And so what I did is I got to like week 6. It's a 12-week devotional, and I got to week 6, and then I started sending them out so that I was ahead. And that way, but it got towards the end where they were reading and going through week 9, and I was writing week 10, and so forth and so on. Those last couple weeks, they were right behind me. I had to hoof it. But what it did is it forced me, because it's out there. People were waiting for it. And I didn't want to look stupid and go, it's a 12-week thing, but I'm only going to give you 7. I didn't want to do that. So self-imposing those deadlines on yourself by getting it out to the world somehow is a very good way to hold yourself accountable, put your feet to the fire.
Yeah, it's a very good process. Look, I want to keep the conversation moving, because we've got a couple of questions from the non-believers, if you like, in the self-publishing world. I want to honor that Joey's got some comments. I want to throw those in and talk about those. That's the great thing about live streaming. We have real people in the chat room chatting, and I want to honor those. So I self-publish, but don't think that's the best way to go. What are your thoughts there about the disadvantages of self-publishing? Why wouldn't you do it? Do you want to pick up on that, Joyce? Because you've seen both sides of the coin.
Well, I think what Joey's talking about here is, Joey, you just didn't know the process, and you didn't know, probably you needed to have more of an audience built up before you published that, a bigger email list, those kind of things. And it's something that you can still do, but I do highly recommend, I think it's episode 502, I'll double check, what Susan Neal did was hers was nonfiction. I think, Joey, is yours nonfiction? Let me know in the comments. But what she did is she wrote a magazine article and a guest blog post, and she did a podcast almost every month. That was her marketing plan. And that's how she got the word out. That's the thing, Joe. You can't do it just on your own. And that's where a traditional publisher has places to put it. But even if they, at that point, if people don't know who you are, they might not pick it up unless the title just really intrigues them. And you've got to do the marketing yourself. And what I would focus on if I were you, Joey, is get the Writer's Market Guide, and it's nonfiction. Okay, good. Get the Writer's Market Guide and look for places where you can get an article published, or where you can guest blog post or podcast, whatever your topic is, and you write things around your topic.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be exactly about the book, but it could be something that's even in addition to the book, and you get the interest. And Roy, what have you done to garner interest from your readers?
Okay, a lot, but going back to what you were saying about professionals, I would say that there are professionals. You just have to hire them. That's the difference, right? I mean, when you're working with a big publishing house, one of the advantages is they have their stock and trade editors that are experienced in what they do. And as a published author, you have to go out there and find the editors. For me, I always have multiple editors. I have several layers of editors, right? I always do that. And you cannot publish a book without having more than one editor, in my opinion, because you need multiple passes. This past book that I put out, this most recent book, 7 Rules of Time Travel, I put up ads on Facebook to have beta readers. And so I had 200 beta readers that eventually signed on, and so I sent out all the books to beta readers. So these were, members of the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Guild, on Facebook, and so I specifically targeted, who was gonna, sign up as a beta reader, and so I got all this great feedback, and so I made tons of changes based on the feedback that I got. And out of the 200, you're not going to get all of them to actually respond. Some people just want a free book. But,
right.
I did get maybe 20 to 30 people that were giving me feedback, and people were picking up on different things. And even big publishers are going to miss certain things. And, as a self-published author, then you can revise it even after it's published. And I did that. Even after I had all the passes and editors and proofers, there's always something that slips through. And so you're able to pivot quickly and then get that out there and make those changes. And so that's what I did. Even as I'm getting feedback and on reviews from, books from people that they bought, I'm able to say, okay, I see this, and I go in there and then, I can make a change. So the thing is, you have to outsource. You have to hire editors. You have to have beta readers. You need as many eyes on your book as you possibly can. And like Joyce was saying, you need a system. It is all about systems. And so throughout the entire writing process, once you get that first draft done, you cut your 10, 20%, like Stephen King says, you do your second draft, and then you get it out there to your structural editor or whoever editor that you're working with. And then you can start to get eyes from beta on there, and then you can go and make some additional changes.
Yeah. Well, let me pick up on what you've just said there, Roy. A couple of things. What we can see now here, that one of the major disadvantages, and I'm thinking Joey would agree wholeheartedly with this, is that one of the major disadvantages of self-publishing is there's a lot more work. There's just a lot more work, but you have more control. And I really want to pick up on what you did with Medium, this lovely third-party blogging site that is completely non-aligned to any of the other major sites. It's a blogging site that got the word out really fast for you. Can you tell me how you did that?
Yeah, so, I spent money on a course on blogging before I decided to go to Medium. And after I did the course to get some strategies on not just marketing, but also improving my writing, I signed up for the Mission, and the Mission, was like a subscription thing on Medium, and so they have their own platform on Medium. So instead of me just doing it by myself, I was able to get a broader audience, through Medium. And so that's definitely one of the, superior strategies is, if you're starting with no audience, why do that? Why do that? Just plug into something else that's already there, and stand on the shoulders of giants, as it were, and broadcast to a larger audience, and then you can get more subscribers and followers to you, and then you can set up your own, mailing list and lead magnet and everything on your own Medium page. And so that's what I did. I wrote articles that were geared towards the same type of topics that I was covering in the book before I launched the book. I was doing that like maybe 6 to 9 months before.
You're doing everything that we teach. You're doing everything we teach. It's brilliant. And we've seen now here you've got a real example. 5 books in the field, audio books, non-fiction books. They're on Amazon. You're doing everything right. It's just very inspiring. It's so inspiring.
Yeah. Roy, can you give me, I have heard people talk about Medium. I've been out on Medium, but I've never quite understand, I guess, the power of it, how it works. Can you explain that some more?
Sure. So, they've recently changed, and I have not been as active recently on Medium as I was before when I was focused on the nonfiction. But they have a subscriber list, and they can push your articles to people that are on that list. And so when you write an article, you also have the search feature, and the more you get ranked on the search feature, the more your articles will appear. And so there's different strategies that you can use to have your articles show up. And so it kind of like with Amazon, where you're selecting keywords and genre areas, you can do the same thing in Medium by putting tags on your articles. And the tags that are more relevant. And there's a couple of strategies that you can use, like using a main, broader tag, and then, niching down into some specific ones. then you can kind of funnel people into that article, and then you just publish more and you get more readership. And one thing that I also did was, as when I did the course, there were also people that I networked with and I contacted. I already had a network building up through Twitter, so I reached out to people like Hal Elrod, who retweeted my stuff, and I got thousands of shares just off of that one retweet that he posted on his Facebook page, the Miracle Morning Facebook page. And so you have to network, you have to kind of utilize everything, and it all comes together.
Well, I want to bring.
I got a quick question.
You go, Joyce.
Yeah. So with that though, on Medium, are you doing that for your nonfiction or your fiction? Does it work for both?
That was for nonfiction, right? So I had used other services to try to get an audience for my fiction, like Vocal. So I've done some like nonfiction shorts on other stuff. So I mean, I'm sure you could use Medium, but for me, Medium was more of a nonfiction kind of a thing. And then there were other areas, other sites that may be more amenable to fiction kind of work. So you just have to kind of tailor it to whatever it is that you're doing.
Okay, that's good to know. That's good to know, because that is something that I've just haven't ventured out to, because I'm going a lot of directions as it is.
Yeah.
Every time I put out there, I was like, oh, one more thing. So, but
I think it's really powerful to have many people on the show, because I talked to Roy before the show, and Roy has got a very specific structure with Medium, which is a blog post. He's done the work ahead of time, 6 to 12 months before the book came out. He was already blogging, building his audience in the writing format, because that's what he does. He's a writer and he wants to focus on writing. But I want to bring Gayl in here, because we have a gig tomorrow for the writers in the California area. It's a big state, but I can't remember what town that particular gig is in. But I want to bring Gayl in, because we're talking about a totally different strategy, and that is in the new normal, when you cannot travel to an event or may not be able to travel, what are the new paradigms? And so one of the new paradigms is this idea that you can talk directly to your audience through the idea of live streaming, and also through a podcast. So what are the main things we're going to cover tomorrow, Gayl, and what are the things that writers really need to be thinking about in the new normal?
Well, it's very important to remember that it really doesn't matter the format that you're in. Each format that you're in has its own guardrails and has its own holes in the ground that you can step on and break a toe, right? So you have to be very well aware of what they are. I think in a way, this whole Zoom culture, and I'm just thinking about this as we're talking, this whole Zoom culture has completely, in a way, legitimized social media. Because in the case of a lot of very successful people, they have been speaking directly to their fans and their customers, and big business has been talking to their clients for years. What this whole Zoom culture has done, I think, is sort of legitimized it. It's like, okay, my son, here you go, you're legitimate now, and so, and also one of the things it did in being legitimized, it disenchanted it. So it isn't something that's just so creepy, weird, and you want me to sell my book, from my laptop and talk to, and you don't want me to do it from my house, Really, what it's doing, it's forcing people to have to kind of go with the flow and let go of whatever it is they thought it would take to move their message forward. Because I got to tell you something, we don't live in that world anymore. Does that mean we're not going back there? I don't know. Nobody knows. All I know is that we're learning how to live in the now. What this format of the new normal allows us to do within minutes to talk to anybody that wants to talk to us.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, it's contingent on the rules from the past. You have to understand and appreciate that it is media. It is giant media.
Yeah.
So you have to play by the rules of the media. Sound bites, talking the points. What are you selling? How do you want the world to see you? What would you like your takeaway to be? I talked earlier about your story. You have to be generous with your story because you never know what it's going to say that will resonate in another person. So that's really important. Also, you need to know that you are your story. And and you got to keep your eyes on the prize.
Yeah. Well, look, I want to pick up on one thing that we've mentioned a couple of times. When you're talking about generous with your story, this is a key phrase, generous with your story. You have interviewed some very, very famous people, and the son of a very famous person who shall remain nameless said, I'm very happy to talk about my new project as the son of someone else, but I don't want to talk about my dad. And you said to him, well, and hang on, the only reason I'm talking to you is because you are the son of, and that's where we start the conversation. Without that piece, there's nothing to say.
Well,
because without
the thing about that is, as a reporter, you have to set the table. And if you bring this guy in and nobody knows who he is, why are they going to listen to him?
Yeah.
And so they want to hear about his dad so that they can find him on their radar so they can buy into your story.
Buy into his story. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. You need to get there fast. You need to get there immediately. So it's like, good morning, Cincinnati. Oh, by the way, I'm from Cincinnati. There you go. No kidding. What high school did you go to? You got to get there fast.
Yeah.
Because it's like Columbus planting his flag on the ground for Spain. Because then you gotta put pedal to the metal, get going, because you don't know when they're gonna go, okay, I'm tired of your story right now. I want to hear somebody else's story.
Because you're talking about sound bites, aren't you?
I'm talking about sound bites and talking points. Who are you? The sound bites are a brief morsel about who you are and what you're selling.
Yeah.
Talking points are the points you will always talk about: where you're from, the journey of your writing the book, and then you choose the right tool for the right time. So, listen, when you do any kind of media experience, which is exactly what we're doing right now, is a media experience, I Googled you. And if I had known that Roy was here, I would have Googled him as well. And you know why? Because maybe he would have Googled me. And what that's going to do, it's going to collapse the whole thing. We're going to be holding hands and singing Kumbaya in the first 30 seconds. That's what you want. You want to get there, and you want to get there fast. You want to get there on your own terms. And then that's where the generosity comes in.
It's brilliant. Look, we're coming up to the hour. It's about 10 minutes to the hour, and we're setting an intention where we do keep the show to an hour. Joyce, do you want to wrap up? And then I'll give the guys one chance to talk about what they are doing and how to get contact. Roy has a fantastic free offer that we have to absolutely give him kudos for. So what do you think the main points are today that we've talked about, and where do we go from here?
I think the thing you need to consider with self-publishing is, if you're going to do it, be strategic. That's the problem. So many writers go in and they're just kind of, I'll try this. I might try that. I'll do a book launch, and like it's a smorgasbord. And you've got to be focused and be strategic with what you're going to do, because if you're not, it's just going to fall flat. And that's the nature of business. It is not going to be easy, and I really recommend I know a lot of people are so excited when they finish their book. Give yourself 6 to 9 months after your book's done to make sure, even if you've been doing that all along, if you've been building your audience, get that momentum going and warm them up to it. Give them teasers and whatever it is that you need to build up your audience. But that's when you need to be being a guest on a podcast, writing articles, finding other influencers who will support you. I mean, they may be influencers on a small level, or they could be major influencers. It depends on what kind of connection you can get with people, because that influencer thing, that's what the big piece, and that's something that Tim Grahl teaches. He something called book launch, and launch a bestseller is one of his books. And you really want influencers, because you got to remember, you're not a publishing company who has thousands of distribution channels that they can put your book. You are just one person, and you've got to figure out how are you going to get this book to the masses. And so that's the important thing. And so just like Roy has done and Gayl has done, you have to figure out a way that'll work for you, and know it's a process, and you can't just go shooting in the dark thinking, I've got a book out, they're all going to buy it because they love me. But if they don't know who you are, they're not. So, Roy, what would you say?
I have a few things, like, I don't be afraid to outsource. You have to outsource.
Yes,
there's no
100%
hands or buts about it. Don't make your own cover, please. Don't do that.
Oh, no.
Hire somebody else and spend a lot of money, a fair amount of money, at least a few hundred. I always spend close to $1,000 on my covers. Have somebody else write your blurb for you. Pay them $100, $200. The cover is number one. The blurb is number two. More than your book. Because if nobody wants to look at your cover and nobody likes your blurb, they're not going to bother to read your book. And then the first 20 pages of your book. So make sure you have an extra editor to go over that first 20 pages. Make sure it grabs their attention. Make sure it's page turning. And that will get people to buy your book. And if you want them to buy your second book, make sure your first book is great. So that would be my advice when you're going in there. Make sure you get those pieces done. That's the product side of it. And you have to work with other people. You can't do it all on your own. You can try. But if you really want to set yourself up for success, that's really what you need to do. And I would say make sure you start a list, a newsletter, start building that out. And that really is, it's an essential piece. I know a couple of people don't do it, but for the most part, the successful writers out there that sell a lot of books, they have a list. So do some research on how to sell a list and get some advice on that.
And with that in mind, can you tell us about your free offer? Because this is exactly what you're talking about. There's a free book on your website for the price of an email. You will send the book out in various formats, and then that builds your list so you can send out a weekly newsletter about your story. How do you do it? Because you've got a really good example.
Right. It's not exactly weekly, but I do put out emails periodically for various things. And so royhuff.net, I have a link on the top, or you can go to royhuff.net/salvationship. Either way, you'll be able to get there. You type in your email address, and then you'll be able to download the book. It's a space opera short, and you can get that for free in whatever format you need.
Roy, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Do you also have a hard book, or is everything downloadable? This is like the great thing that I like going on in my brain right now.
Yeah, I got hardcovers too. So, well, paperback. I did for my first 3 books, I did do actual hardcover books as well through Lightning Source. But the last few books, I've just used the Create Space format and done the paperback. I could do the extended distribution and do the Lightning Source. I think they've changed their name now, but or they were bought out by another company. And I may do that. But yeah, I always have a physical paperback at least for my books, just because they're, it's a different market, and again, multiple streams of income, and Libraries, I always donate it to my school library, and people want to see it and that kind of thing. So yeah, absolutely.
Because I quit doing books. When I'm there's no speaking gigs, so that's where I sell books. So I've just completely done away with For Now, because life now is all about For Now. I'm only selling books.
Yeah. Well, let's pick up on that. I'm going to wrap up now, but let's pick up on what you've just said there, Gayl. You were, for a very long time selling books at physical gigs in the city and at various places, and now we can't do these. And tomorrow we're speaking virtually in, I think it's Redondo Beach, California, the actual location of the conference if it had have taken place. And so you now don't have a physical book; you only have a download. So do you have the link that we can share for you on that?
Yeah, it's you can come to it's gaylmurphy.com.
gaylmurphy.com.
Or Interview Tactics. The name of my book has 3 titles. It's Interview Tactics, How to Survive the Media Without Getting Clobbered, The Insider's Guide to Giving a Killer Interview.
Yeah. So have you found that works well, just having the online version? Why did you stop making physical books?
I stopped making physical books because people didn't want them anymore. And they in the milieu of this, they're fine with it. Yeah, at a big book fair, they want a book, so I'll order some books. I'll go to Lightning Source and I'll order some books.
Okay. Well, look, we've chatted about it.
You want to fish, you got to fish where the fish are.
I'll just want to wrap up and give everyone kudos again. I want to thank Roy specifically for coming in from Hawaii. We had a bit of a time challenge getting his schedule to work. So he has 2 really lovely books, but 5 in total. And so I really want to honour those 2 stories. I also want to thank Gayl for coming in and for inviting me to speak at this conference, which is tomorrow. So I wanted to thank Roy, I want to thank Gayl, and I want to thank Joyce for being my partner in crime here. So I'm going to wrap up. I've got a lovely little thank you video that I found, and I want to thank you all for being part of it. Thank you for the questions. Thanks, Joey, for making such wonderful comments. And we'll see you all next week.